Good morning. Good morning. Happy Friday. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your breakfast event where you get to take a moment to stop, pause, and breathe. Having maybe a big week, moving into your weekend, and taking some time for you to relax and to refresh, to reflect, and to reset. So my name's Karen Williams. I'm really excited to welcome you to this conversation this morning. Thank you for being here. Thank you for investing in your time. So if you've been with us before, you might have seen us deliver our breakfast events from a beautiful space called Creative Cubes, where we base ourselves. And so I'm coming to you today from stage 4 lockdown in Melbourne. So we're doing it a little bit differently. Georgie, my business manager, usually has all things under control. And so it's all up to me at the moment. And I'm doing the best that I can. So it's very exciting for me that you're here and that we can continue these conversations as we move through the unknown and the unfamiliar day by day. So wherever you're from, I welcome you and I'm excited that you're here. So thank you for jumping in. I'm Karen Williams. I'm a transformational coach, a trainer, organisational trainer. I'm a speaker and an author, and I work with leaders and teams in helping them build environments of trust and emotional safety, to have the courageous conversations, to build positive momentum and take their business and organisations forward. I also work specifically with leaders, women and men, in leadership and also communication. Today's our topic of communication, and also around building trust with their teams. And what happens is when leaders work with me one-on-one, they find that the work crosses all of their lives. And so we do deep dives into their personal lives and what's working and not working in their well-being, in their relationships, in how they're navigating their life, and also obviously as a leader in business. So just making sure that we're all here and looking at the chat box. Thank you everyone letting me know that you're here. Thank you. Hi Lisa, hi Sarah. Love to hear who's here. So if you'd like to say hello in the chat box, it would be wonderful for me to have you here in my home. So hi Anne, hi Carolyn, hi Helen, lovely to see you. Hi Anna, thank you and welcome. Really pleased that you're here. Hi Michael, hi Tracy, hi Sally, hi Rita, hi Robin. So thanks for jumping on, Robin, at late notice. So a few people sometimes miss the mark, and so we have to close it off the night before, but if ever that happens, just email Georgina and she'll send you the link. Hi Francis, hi Rexy, hi Al. Lovely to see you or connect with you. Elizabeth, hello, welcome. So thank you all. I think Tony, Lisa, Joan. Hi, Joan. Wonderful to see you all. Thank you so much. Hi, Fiona. So lots of people still jumping on, and really pleased that you're here. Today is about communication. I wonder what you were thinking today as you were moving into this topic of communication. Maybe as you were gathering your breakfast for this morning, as I was preparing for today. Hello, Natalie. Yes, fantastic. Hi, Jazz, Megan, Tanya. Lovely to see you all. Thank you so much. As I was thinking about this topic of communication, I'm thinking to myself, where did this all start for me? And I know when in the early days of my career and also my relationships, I liked to control things. I liked to control how things would go. And including, and I wasn't planning to share this, but here it is in my mind to share. And, you know, this is a space of vulnerability and courage, so leaders go first, right? So when I was engaged many years ago, and I actually gave my soon-to-be husband 3 weekends that he could choose from to propose to me. So how's that for no spontaneity, but full control? So that's where I was in my mind. That was around my late 20s, where I was surviving life. I was in this deep survival mode of, you know, trying to just push through. I was working really hard, really long days, and I was doing extremely well in my corporate career. But I didn't know then that my health was suffering or my body was starting to really suffer. And of course, my relationships were suffering. So my beautiful, kind husband obliged. And needless to say, that marriage didn't last very long. He's still a very beautiful, kind man, and unfortunately didn't work out. But at that time, I was not in a good state. All I wanted to do was control everything. And so really around communication, that's kind of when, when I had my quarter life crisis at about 30, and what we would call midlife crisis at about 45 or 50. And so that took me into an inquiry, a really deep inquiry of, what is it to be a human being? What is it to connect and communicate with others? And what is it to be self-empowered? What is it to allow ourselves to take ownership of that and allow ourselves to be empowered, no matter the circumstances around us? And for me, that's been ongoing all the way through the last couple of decades. So I've been a transformational coach now for 20 years, and I love what I do. It's my passion. It's what I live for my own journey around enlightenment and how to be in our powerful state no matter what the circumstances are, and helping people find that state for themselves through conversations like this. So if you haven't been here before, that might have been a lot to start with. Wasn't planning on sharing that, but hey, let's lean into a courageous conversation on a Friday morning. I've done the work and to own all of my story. And Brené Brown talks about, being able to own our shame and our embarrassment and our pain. And now I can do all of that because it's the work that I've done, like this work that I share with you every Friday or every second Friday, doing that work so we can own our whole story. Because when we can, that's when we are in our full state of empowerment. So Friday morning conversations, don't you love it? So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sally. So great to see you all. Manarami, I think that's how I pronounce your name. If I got it wrong, please let me know. But lovely to connect with you on LinkedIn as well. And so, so this space of communication, I learned about transformation. I started my transformational journey 20 years ago. And a lot of what I learned in that space, in the study of ontology, which is the study of being human, is about the words that we speak, but the tone that we use, the pace that we use, the spaces that we leave, the listening, the quality of our listening, and so many inflections in our voice that can help us navigate, influence, and have the impact that we want to have. And so we have a natural default style, and you might have noticed if you've been here before that my natural default style is passion and energy and fast pace. That's kind of where I roll. And for some, that's fantastic. And for some others, not so much. And so when I'm coaching or when I'm working with groups, small groups, or I'm working in face-to-face or even online, it's about really tuning into what do people need from me right now. Now, that doesn't mean that we're perfect and we know and we get it all right. But if we could just flex a little bit, we'll talk about our default style today. We'll talk about what the impacts of our own communication on others, and then how we can move through into new insights and new awareness to communicate in ways that lift others up. And so that's what we'll be talking about today. So if it's your first time here today, welcome. Welcome into my home, and I really love that you're here. Thank you for trusting the person that referred you, because I know a lot of people are sharing these events, or just trusting yourself for jumping in. And if you've been here before, and I know many of you have been here on a number of occasions, and you keep coming back to immerse yourself in these conversations, then I welcome you as well. And I'm thrilled that you're here, and I value and appreciate your trust and our connection. So thank you. And so there's 3 things here today that we'll talk about around the value that you'll get. Power to me. Yes, power to me. Power to you too, Lucy. So the 3 things that I want you to think about today is we're going to be thinking about your style of communication. So your or my style of communication. I'm hoping you can see that okay. So I was playing around with watching myself last night from on the last session to make sure that this was all working. So I think it is, but let me know if it's not. So I want you to be thinking about, as we go forward today, this morning, your style of communication and where that comes from and where it works and where it doesn't work. So what's your default style? And that might be in your professional relationships, that might be with clients, engaging stakeholders, it might be in your personal relationships, it might be in your relationship with yourself and how you speak to yourself. So that's the thinking that we'll do. And then there's the doing. So what am I going to be doing in this hour today, Karen? So you're going to be reflecting, taking notes, and on new insights. So I really want you to be listening for what's new for you. So sometimes we listen for, do I agree or disagree with this? Have I heard this before or not? Do I like it or not? So that's valid, but it's limited. It gives us limited results. And you might walk away from today going, oh, that was interesting. But I really want you to walk away going, oh my God, that was so worth my time. And I've got so much, and I'm going to go out into my life and I'm going to make some positive changes if I want to, and experience some great results, even more extraordinary results, right? So look, we're listening for the new, and you'll leave with new insights, and you'll leave with clarity, and you'll leave with tools. So if you've been here before, you'll know that with the intention of serving you, I'm looking to create new frameworks and new tools all the time to give you a new way of looking at things. Have you ever watched a movie and you've watched it once and you really enjoyed it, but you might have gone back and watched it again, you pick up all these different nuances that weren't there before? Hey, that reminds me of the movie Grease, where you watch it as an adult. It's very different to when you watch it as a child. Anyone had that experience? So be really listening for the things that are new today for you. No matter how experienced or how successful or accomplished you are, there is always another layer. And I really admire the leaders that I work with who are extremely accomplished in their career and in their lives, and they are still hunting for the new. What's the next layer? What's the next layer? And they dive in with me and reckon with themselves and come up against themselves. And sometimes that's really challenging. And I know some of you are on the call today. And so if you can start to hunt for the new, not just today, but when you're listening to your leader, when you're listening to your coach or your mentor, when you're listening to your team, can you be listening for what's new here that I could actually learn for myself in the results that I want to achieve, whether it's more influence or more impact or better results. All right, so we're going to think, do, and you're going to leave with new tools. You got me? So you'll know here that I'm going to be using the board quite a bit, so I'll be rubbing things off and putting things back on. So I hope you've got your notebook and your pen, and I'm going to be rubbing this off now. So what do you want to think about today? What do you want to do, and what do you want to leave with? Maybe you might like to take a moment to reflect on that. What do you want to think about? What do you want to do? What do you want to leave with today? All right. Because if you're listening with intention, then that's going to help you draw the learning to you. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat box. Hi, Vicky. Love to hear from you in the chat box to hear what are you going to think or do or leave with today? What's your intention for today? So take a moment to do that. Right. We're co-creating today. I'm sharing with you, you're drawing it to you, you're going to go bang and leave with some amazing results and insights. All right, so I hope you've taken a moment to put that down, and if you want to share in the chat box, that would be amazing. So we're going to be talking about, so Rita says, communication to potential new clients without sounding desperate. Very good, Rita. And that's the distinction we shared in the last webinar, wasn't it? Which was it last one or the one before? The distinction between commitment and attachment. So I can be committed and stand for a certain outcome, but can I not be attached so that I'm not clutching? Yep, same in any conversation and any outcome we're looking for within ourselves or with people. If I'm attached to how my team go about something, then I'm going to try and to control it rather than allow them to navigate it themselves and coach and guide them when we get the same outcome. Yeah, very good, Rita. Love it. Thank you. Think about the impact of my style on others. Yes, yes. Nice one, Tracy. I love it. Impact of our style. And so, we can be having an impact on others and not actually even know it, and wonder why people respond to us in the way that they do. Yes. I've shared with some of you my story about being called a bully. I had no idea. This is a number of years ago, probably 15 years ago, something like that. I had no idea that that's how I was coming across. And it certainly wasn't my intention. And I knew on the inside I had a huge loving heart. But that in that moment, that person experienced me as a bully energy. It's the only time that's ever happened for me. But it had me stop and go, okay, what's going on? Took me in a direction of understanding all of this. So knowing how we land for others is really important. And there's a distinction here that we don't want to be becoming someone that just changes ourselves to please others. And it's really subtle here, but it's really important. Flexing our style, knowing our default style, and then maybe shifting it to engage people in a different way is about service. It's about being able to serve others from that knowing and that intuition, that understanding, as opposed to, now I need to change myself so they're happy. That's not what we're talking about. If you know me, you know that's not what we're talking about. Jazz says communicating authentically in interviews without oversharing. Love it. Love that, Jazz. Well done. Prevent frustration coming out in the voice as it's not helpful. Yes. Tanil, thank you. So we are frustrated. Some people say to me, I felt really frustrated, but I didn't tell them I was. But we know that the energy change and the energy exchange and transfer, we can feel people's energy, you feel people's energy. And so when they're frustrated, other people are going to know when you're frustrated. We all have that, right? Very good. All right, good sharing so far. Thank you. So have a think about, so you might like to write in your notebook, what is communication? And so when I was thinking about this for today, obviously words, obviously tone, yeah, facial expressions, body language, we know. Also, I would say body movement. So if I'm kind of clutched up and kind of like this, sharing with you, how does that feel for you? If I'm open and I'm relaxed and I'm generating from the inside out, can you feel me different? So yeah, what's going on in the body? But the body needs to be representing what's going on in the inside, yes? And Anna says, how to improve communication during online team meetings. Yes, and receiving feedback. Sarah says, being able to confidently express a conflicting review without feeling my communication has become passive. So good. These are beautiful insights. Well done. I love the thinking that is behind these sharings. So awesome. I'm hoping everyone can see that so that you can learn from each other, right? So body language and movement. So what else is communication? So what I have, and you might have some other things, is stories, speeches, dance, art, poetry, any form of expression, is communication, isn't it? Music and song, right? Food is a communication. So those, putting them sort of in categories to be thinking about the depth and the breadth of communication. The other thing I was thinking was gifts, gifts and cards. Did you used to, make your own cards? My dream one day was to have a stationery line because I'd never find the right card that I wanted to express all of my feelings. This is the beginning of that. So these are our great work by Georgie, who's starting our stationery line. How exciting is that? Life is just amazing, isn't it? So gifts and cards. What have I got there? Emojis, a communication, yes. And sharing and creating, can you say that? You can't say that. Sharing and creating experiences. That's all communication, isn't it? Creating experience to share with someone else, that's communicating a message, isn't it? Or not doing that is communicating a message as well. So there's so many levels to the communication that we're talking about here. Also, so that's what is communication, yeah? And so some of that is how as well, isn't it? So through our tone, through our words, through how we communicate, through our facial expression, we might say all the right things, but how we say them is very, very important, isn't it? Because you might hear someone say some things to you, but the energy they're communicating is very different. And that's going to leave you with a different feeling and experience than if the words and the energy were aligned. Yeah, and that's when I talk about clean energy. So often when we say, for instance, going into a meeting and not feeling confident, we'll put on the bravado jacket and, the fake it till we make it. And then somewhere in there, potentially, there's going to be something that triggers us. And then we'll kind of reconnect back with that underlying feeling that we had going in. And then we don't have the tools or the skills to get ourselves back to a state of real empowerment. And so sometimes we can kind of close off, or we can project, or as Sarah just shared, we might kind of experience ourselves, or others might experience us as passive. I had some amazing conversations this week, in the last couple of weeks, with extraordinary leaders, just beautiful people. I know some of you on the call today, and that those stories that we've got that I'm going to be sharing with you now about how we make up our communication style and the things that trigger us. Yes, I'm thinking about you, the giggle experience. Okay, so if you got that, what would you like to add to what is communication? Anything else that you would say, what is communication, before I go on to the next piece? Because I want to take you to how do we learn to communicate. Energy, yes. Why would I not have that up here? Energy, who said that? Thank you, Robin. It's really, the nuances of our flow of energy as well, not communicating. Yes, so silence, wonderful. Thank you so much. Silence is one of my favourite things. You might not always know that with me, but when I'm coaching, holding the space through silence is very powerful. Being clear, love that, Jess, thank you. Clear is kind, as Brené says. Excellent. So, very good sharing, thank you. So, let me rub this off, or maybe I'll put it here. Is everyone seeing the board okay? Hope so. So, how do we learn how to communicate? This is interesting too, right? So, how do we learn? Have you ever thought about how you learned to communicate in the way that you do? So first it starts with, our environment. So, when we're born into a certain environment, there's a certain language or way of speaking or words that are used. So it's not just about culture. It's about, or, as in the language we speak at home, whether it's English or Greek or Italian or whatever that is. But it's about the words that are used at home, or the phrases. Do you ever find yourself speaking a phrase that was from your mum or dad? And you go, oh, I just sounded like my mum there, or my dad. Yes. And so we pick that up, don't we? And it's embedded, and it comes out maybe when you've had children, and then you hear yourself speaking your mum or your dad. Springy language, slang. So school, right? So you can take the girl out of Springvale, but she'll always have a bit of slang there. I've realised that through these breakfast events when we get subtitles and it comes back with, Gunner, and I'm like, oh, did I really say that? Unfortunately, that's true. So around school, and the people that we make friends with at school, their families and how they speak as well influence us, yes? And so then once we've left school, and then we go into so for instance, our first job or university, whatever that looks like, and then we go into a culture within a working environment, there's a certain language used there as well, isn't it? So at work, there's a language through the culture. And I'm reading, I love recommending books that I'm half reading because I don't want to hold back. I want to give you what I'm finding is really amazing at the moment. So this book here, The Insider's Guide to Culture Change, is an amazing book that was recommended to me by an amazing woman. And I'm reading this at the moment and I'm loving it. Some of the things are really challenging me because Siobhan talks, and Siobhan McHale was the woman who led the culture change in the ANZ Bank. And that was over a period of 7 years, which I love because transformation can happen in a moment, but it takes time to sustain it. Because often as leaders, we want change to happen really quickly. But culture can live inside the walls. And so language can live inside the walls, as a beautiful leader shared with me this week. So when we're coming to so if you're a leader in an organisation, be aware of when you've got people coming in, they're going to be picking up language that's already within the culture. So there's lots of ways that we actually learn how to communicate. I would put in here things like expectations, obligations around how we learn, the roles that we choose, the pecking order. of maybe the sibling order, or what's going on at home. Sometimes the gender that we are or others are influences how we communicate. Potentially sexuality. There's so many things that influence. You can see why it's so complex, and why sometimes we wonder why we can't have a better result when we keep doing the same thing, keep speaking the same way over and over again. So I'm sure you've got other things, of course, religion and so on would go on there as well. And that's all I want to add there, because I want to move on. So I'm wanting to build a picture for you about how complex this is, and why we need to really self-reflect to understand how to communicate better. Because you can read a book, you can find some tips and tricks and some 3 steps, and I do those things as well. But if you're not working on the be, do, have distinction, as I said before, doing is the saying, what we say and what we do, the actions. If we do all the right things and say all the right things, but we haven't shifted our being or our energy, then we're going to be communicating this message, not this message. Yes? So the context of who we're being, our energy and our being is made up of as our thoughts and feelings, right? If we're not aware of what's going on, let's say in a meeting where we don't feel confident, or in a meeting where we feel like we're trying to push our point of view, if we're not aware that we're doing that in our state of being in the moment, then what's going to communicate is our state of being. We might say that's all fine, but people are going to feel uncomfortable if we're kind of triggered, yes? So communication, this piece here, is about understanding what happens and how we've learned how to communicate and what's driving our communication so we can change it. You with me? You have to explain the Australian phrases to your husband who's French. That's so funny, Sally. Thank you. All right, so give me a thumbs up or a yes or something, an insight to let me know that this is working, because I need to step you through each step. So I'm going to rub this off, but just let me know if you can in the chat box, please, that it's making sense, it's helpful, and it's working for you. Thank you. Awesome people. Amazing. All right. You might like to highlight in that list, if you've written them down, I hope you have, like the few things that go, oh yes, I can see where that, like I can see where trying to live into expectations really drives my communication. Thank you, Fiona, it's all resonating. Or, my being a woman or being a man, that actually impacts how I communicate. And maybe I didn't see that before, I didn't see how much that was impacting my communication. So just taking a moment to highlight a couple of things on your list that are really resonating for you about what's driving your communication in a positive or a negative way. I'm going to have a drink of water. Thank you, Anne. Now, how's the light going? We had some issues with the light last session, didn't we? I think we've got it okay. I think you can see the board okay. All right, we're good. I'm on to it, Georgie. 30 minutes. The other thing that I wanted to share with you about communication is that the roles that we adopt, the leadership roles, the roles in our family. I've coached many leaders, many accomplished leaders who realize that they're still playing out the old role that they had in the family years ago. And so the sibling dynamic, when you go out and live your life and then you go back home for Christmas and everyone falls back into the same pattern. So, those roles that we adopt impact our communication as well. And so if we do this work and maybe start to shift those things, and then we go home for Christmas and we realize that we're sort of starting to shift away from that pattern, and we start to observe it and realize what people are doing. It's quite interesting, isn't it? And so the roles that we adopt unconsciously a lot of the time impact how we communicate and how confident and clear and clean we feel in our communication. Alrighty. Age, yes, age can drive communications as well. Yes, fantastic. All right, so the next piece is, I want to give you is that we all have a communication survival guide. Right, so I want you to write on the top, what's on the next piece of paper, whatever, what's my survival guide around communication? Because we all have a survival guide when it comes to communication, and I'll share with you now how you created that, okay? So I've just got some notes that I'm referring to make sure I cover everything for you. So part of what impacts our communication is how safe we feel. Are we in a trusted space? Because you know those people that you trust, you'll share with them whatever you're feeling, but there'll be other people that you don't trust so much to share those levels. So there's how safe we feel. When we talk about psychological safety, or there's a book, The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety, you might like to check out, or emotional safety as well. And so what else impacts our communication is the decisions we make and the experiences that we have, yeah? And so some of the last webinars we've done will speak to this. And if you'd like to revisit some of our last webinars, if you're new here, you'll find them all on our new YouTube channel, which is extremely exciting. And a lot of people have gone and checked some things out. So you'll find all of our past breakfast events there if you'd like to revisit. And sometimes they could be helpful to start conversations with your team or with others as well, friends. And also there's some shorter videos there as well. All right, so what impacts our decision is how our communication is safe. We feel trusted, decisions and our experiences. And in our experiences, we learn what works and what doesn't. So we communicate, we have an experience, we make a decision, and then we decide then how we're going to communicate. And that's our survival guide, right? So we communicate, we have an experience, like we offend someone, or we get feedback that didn't work for somebody. So that's the experience. Then there's the decision that we make about ourselves. Oh, I'm too bossy, or I'm too shy, or I'm too passive. So we make a decision based on the experiences that we have from our communication. And then after that, then we make the decision about then how we need to communicate going forward. So for instance, when I was called a bully that one time, 15 or so years ago, I made a decision then that I needed to learn what was going on. But before I actually started to become empowered in my communication, I swung back the other way. And then I thought, well, I better be nice. I better tone it all down. I better not say what I really mean. I better, soften the edges of my communication. So it sort of swung back for a little while until I started to find my place and really learn about what communication was all about and how I could be empowered and be authentic, but also serve and connect and communicate and influence, yes? So the formula, the way that it goes is we communicate, we have an experience because we're looking for affirmation. Did that land? Is that working? Especially people with deep empathy, really tuning into how it's landing for people. And then I make a decision if that was a good thing or a not so good thing. And then I make a decision about how I communicate going forward. And this is what forms the survival guide. You with me? Can you see that? Can you see that, guys? You can see that, okay. Let me know if you can't see this piece. All right, so that's your survival guide that you're walking around with like a backpack every day in your communication. So you'll go into a meeting with this survival guide, right, on your back, and with all the stuff, all the times you've communicated and all the experiences you've had and all the decisions you've made, right, about what happened there, and then the decisions you've made about now how I should communicate. And you carry that, we all carry that with us on our back. And we go into a meeting and think that we're clear and, aligned in our energy, but we don't realize we've got all this going on from all those past experiences that we've had. And we remember, oh, that's right, that's what happened in that. Well, this is what I better do this time. Or that's right, that person I'm not so good at connecting with. Okay, so I better guard up. And we do it all unconsciously because we've got this backpack on that we're dragging around with us. And as we go year by year, if we're not aware of this, it just gets heavier and heavier and heavier, right? And so when we go into those meetings, we think that we're aligned. Sometimes we are, But then maybe where something is said and we get triggered, and then our backpack goes heavier and we go, oh, that's right. And then we react in the way that we've always reacted. Yes. So communication, the most important thing about today's session is the communication is about being aware in the moment of my triggers. And as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, it's not about not reacting, right? It's about how short is that period between my reaction and when I return to center. And that's something I really want everybody to know. It's not about some perfect state of never reacting, you're right? So some, paradise where we do all this work and then no longer are we human, but we're some ethereal being. No, that's not that. We still react. And then it's about going, okay, am I aware and how quickly I can come back to alignment? Because when I'm in alignment, then I can choose how I want to communicate from a conscious place, not a reactionary backpack place. Yes? Are you with me on this? So with me. Thank you, Carolyn. Let me know that this is working for you. So what's your survival guide, right? So that's the piece I want to give you now. I love this bit. Is the light okay? Let me know if the light's not okay. So what happens for me when I'm preparing for these sessions, what I've noticed is I get to a place where I'm in love with the content and then I know I'm ready to be with you, right? So this is the piece that I really, this is what I want to give you as a survival guide, is something really you can grab onto. Cool. Yeah, excellent. So let's say, so if you draw this circle, okay, so yep, to the light, Lisa, I think that's what you're saying. So this is how you develop your survival guide. So okay, so they're not great circles today, but you know. All right, so I want you to know that, see these decisions, you've got a bunch of them that are really important, that have impacted how you communicate, that drive your communication when you don't even know that it's driving you. Yeah. So I'm going to give you some examples because it'll go way back. Now, as you know, well, you may know, you may not know, but as a coach, my work, the transformational work I do, we visit the past to propel us forward. So we don't stay stuck in the past, but we allow it to inform us so we can pick up where the patterns are getting in our way. And Siobhan talks about patterns as well in her book, about not only the patterns within us, but the patterns within a team, environment, a group, or a culture. Yeah. So I'm going to give you some examples. All right. Thank you, Sally. So, for example, when I was about 11, I presented my first public speaking on fish, on my fish project. And I had memorized and studied and worked hard. Every single word I was memorizing to make sure that it was perfect and I remembered everything. I was so scared I was going to forget. Guess what happened? Got up to present to class, blank. Moment of blank. Has anyone had those moments of just complete blank before you go into something that's really important to you and you want to communicate well? Well, I didn't find my center again, so I ran out of the room crying. So that was one experience, right? So I call that the fish experience, right? And so if I'm talking about that experience, I'm like, okay, so what was the disempowered state that caused from that experience, right? And from there, I decided that I needed to control the environment even more that I was going to communicate in. So if I knew everyone that was in the room, or if I knew how long it was going to be and what I had to say, I thought that was going to help me not have that experience again. So I went more into control, as opposed to something else, which I'll share with you in a minute, which could have been what I did, right? So I want you to find out your own. So we've only got a short period of time today. So I'm sharing with you so that you can tap into your own experiences. So that was my first experience. What was one you can remember? Okay. Have a think about yours. All right. So the next one, I can't remember writing the next one. Let's say my older brother, right? Confident, popular, gift of the gab, right? So I compare myself to him and I decide I'm not like that. So I have these experiences and then I make a decision, right? And so then I decide that I'm shy. So I'm a shy speaker. I shouldn't speak up because I can't speak like he does. Yes, so I hold myself back and I'd be shy. So that's a decision that I make about how I need to communicate going forward. And it's true, in those moments, it's true for us. We don't realize that that's what we're creating. It occurs for us as the truth. You with me? So then let's say my younger brother, so that's another experience, right? He's the funny one, right? And I decide I'm the awkward one. So then I don't own my goofiness or my playfulness or my energy. I start to shut myself down because I feel awkward. Yes. So these start to be the communication survival guide that I start to develop based on my experiences that go, okay, well, I need to be in control. I'm a shy person, so I better be more reserved. I'm awkward, so I really shouldn't probably let my energy flow, or I should just kind of like do it all right. And what happened was when I was a leader in one of a community organisation back in the day, is that I would control everything so much and make it very deliberate. And I was, very kind of restricted in my communication. Even though I was the leader and I was getting up and speaking all the time, I would speak like this, not like this, right? So you've got this survival guide that you've put together through your experiences, yeah, that have you then communicate now in a way that you don't realize is driving your communication. You with me? So I want to give you a couple of minutes to identify even just one or two or three, because you'll do this in your own time. What are the pieces of your survival guide that you've started to put together that forming how you communicate? Yeah. So I want you to take a moment now and reflect. Thank you, Georgie. To reflect on what are some of your experiences that had you create a survival guide. Here's an example. I got up at, I used to learn how to play the guitar. I'm not a guitarist. And I tried it for a little while. And I was chosen to, and I'm not a singer. I was chosen, but I can sing, but I'm not a singer. I was chosen to stand up with, I was about 15, and I was an awkward teenager, right? With a boy, and we sang "You're the One That I Want." No, I wasn't wearing the leathers. I was wearing some awkward outfit, awkwardly playing the guitar and trying to sing. And I decided then that I wasn't creative, right? So can you see how I'm starting to put together the survival guide of my communication style? Okay, over to you. Time for you to put together some of the pieces of your survival guide. What are the moments that happen for you that you can start to see now impacted how you communicate? So go, a couple of minutes to do that, or at least one. I'm going to put my timer on. Feel free to share in the chat box if you'd like to. I know some of you love to share. I'm happy for anyone to share. What is it? What are some of your pieces? Karen, is that why you now wear leather pants? Maybe. Maybe. Moved countries. And so then what did that mean about your communication style? Manarami, what did that mean? So you moved countries, and then what did you decide, or how did that impact your communication? Yes. had to relearn to communicate in the new culture. And what did that, so this is really great, Manorami, thank you for sharing, because this would be helping others. So the experience was, right, so the experience was that I moved countries and I had to relearn how to communicate. And so what did you decide about, so what was so that was the experience, right? And what was the decision about who you needed to be? And how did that add to your survival guide for communication? Anne says, as a child, I often got into trouble for saying the wrong thing. It meant I became reserved and self-conscious. Yes. So that would be, so got into trouble for saying the wrong thing, became reserved and self-conscious. Yes. Very good, Anne. Thank you for sharing. Sally says, a situation where it felt no matter what I said or did, changed anything, so it felt unsafe. So I opt out. Yes. Yes. So that's, you had that situation, didn't feel safe. And so now the communication style is I opt out. And it might not look like that. We might colour that up or, you know, cleverly clothe that in some reason why we might not contribute or we opt out. But it's a disempowered state that's our survival guide in how we communicate, and limits the results that we can get in our communication, our ability to connect, and therefore our ability to engage and influence and build trust with other people, which is essential for creating new results together. Because you know that, you know, there's so many stats on trust that I'm not going to talk about now, but that's a big part of my work, is that when trust is present, anything is possible, right? Did not change anything, right? Okay, yeah, yep. So you're starting to get the story here, right? So there's the experiences and the decisions we make then about who we need to be to communicate in our survival guide. I'd love to hear more. Just tell me that you're getting this. Fear of making mistakes, so become hesitant. Yes, that's beautiful sharing, Francis. Thank you. So I can see that you're starting to put this together. And what I'd like to see is that you fill out, it doesn't matter how many, that's just an example. You could have 4 or 5, or you could have 10 or 20. Yeah. But if you can get to those moments along the way where you made those decisions, you'll start to see how you created your communication style, and now how that drives you. When you look back on the intentions you had for today, how that drives you in those situations. Yes. Oh, such a great share, Neil. Couldn't answer a question once, so decided I'm not good off the cuff. Yes, that's a very clear what happened, and you know, the decision I made about the communication style, right? I decided to be the joker to hide my low self-esteem. Beautiful sharing, Georgie. Thank you. Yeah. So then I became, so, you know, things like that for me also, I had, you know, times where I was emotional, right? And so 2 brothers and, you know, very male sort of dominated environment growing up. And so therefore, you know, I became the serious one. Yes. So, you know, instead of, you know, well, obviously emotions are wrong, so I better shut that all down and just become serious. Yes. So the picture we put together, so this is good. All right. So now I want to give you the last piece of this, fear of rejection and the shame. So then what did that mean, Rita, about what you decided about your communication and how you need to communicate? All right. I love your sharing. Thank you so much. Manorami, beautiful. Thank you for closing that loop. Manorami says, spoke 4 languages, but did not master any, became self-conscious and did not feel safe in the work environment. Decided to go back to school to improve my English. And so somewhere, Manorami, if you haven't already, that would be limiting your communication. If you haven't already identified that and let that go, that would be, you know, somewhere in your communication still in some situations, and causing a trigger for you, or a disempowerment or reaction. Trying to fit in. Yes, gave people what they want to hear, not the truth. So good, Rexy. Good reflections, everyone. So, okay, so the impact, right? So then I want you to write, so even if you've got 1 or 2 or 3, that's perfect. Then I want you to go, well, what's the impact on me when I communicate in my survival guide, right? I've got my backpack on and I'm going into the meeting or conversation and I don't realize I've got my backpack on because I'm just used to carrying this thing around. And so what's the impact when we're communicating through our survival guide? All right, so have a think about, I'm just going to write a few up. So for me, hold myself back. I certainly wasn't having any fun. Right? Can you see that? I'll read it out anyway. I wasn't definitely not having any fun. I didn't let myself stand out in my big energy and play and just get stuff wrong. And yes, maybe the slang came through. So I wasn't accessing all the beautiful ideas that we can have when we're in our relaxed creative space. When I'm being serious and I'm not creative and I'm awkward and I'm shy and I'm trying to control, that's a flavor to that, yes? There's no freedom there. And when there's no freedom, there's no ability to connect or build trust or engage. I'm just trying to control everything and push. Yeah. So you can see some of those impacts. So what are your impacts? Type them in the chat box. I'd love to see what are the impacts on you from being in your survival guide. One of them was self-conscious. What's the impact on you of being self-conscious? I imagine that you don't say what you really want to say, so don't speak up. Yeah. And then what's the impact of not speaking up? Do we limit our career? Do we limit our opportunities? Do we not attract the relationship that we want? Do we suffer in our family dynamics? Like limited contribution, Helen, thank you. I'll just put some more over here. Limited contribution. You know, I knew that I had a lot to give and contribute. There was a lot going on in my heart that I wanted to contribute and communicate. But through this survival guide, there was no way that I was going to be able to do that. And so not only could I not contribute, but others couldn't, I wasn't letting anyone else in either. And I would wonder why I would be called a bully or aloof or a snob, which I'd been called, right? But I didn't understand that. But I had my survival guide on, and that's how I was communicating. Yeah. So people couldn't get into me. Don't engage with others. Yep. Don't engage. Both said the same thing at the same time. Missed opportunities. Yes. So lots and lots of impacts. Yes. Okay. So excellent. So there's two things. I've got 6 minutes. There's two things I want to give you. So you're getting the flavor of this. Yes. That you created a survival guide based on your experiences, and now you walk around with that backpack. And so what we want to do is start to take things out of the backpack, or even take the backpack off completely. That would be helpful, wouldn't it? All right. So I'm hoping that this is making sense and you're all on board with this and getting this. Okay. So I told you I would share with you the 3 mistakes. So the first mistake is, and I'm not going to rub that off because I want to use that wheel. The first mistake is we're not aware of the backpack. Maybe I'll put it up here. The first mistake that we make in our communication is that we're not aware of the backpack, right? So we communicate thinking that we're just, you know, we've got all our senses around us, but we're actually got our backpack on and communicating from our survival guide. We don't, so the next mistake is we don't consider who's in the room. So we don't consider, and if you want to go back to one of our previous breakfast events where I talk about the DISC hack around behavioural communication profiles, that will help you understand this point. Don't consider who's in the room. Right? So if I'm a certain type of behavioural communication profile and I'm going into a room with different profiles, then it's a really good idea for me to think about how to flex my style, and so I can connect with them in ways that I wouldn't if I was just communicating from my survival guide and my personality and my own default style. Yes. And so, as I said before, flexing is not about pleasing others. It's about serving. It's a leadership, service mindset. Yes. And the third mistake is we're not aware of when we're triggered. So then we just play it out. We just go down the tunnel, the rabbit hole. And sometimes we can feel ourselves going there, but we don't know how to stop it, right? Or it's just so familiar that we just keep going there. And by that, I mean, we might get triggered and so close off and we just stay closed off. We might get triggered and we project and we just keep projecting even though we're doing it. Or sometimes we don't know we're doing it. So we're not aware of when we're triggered. And so we just play out our survival guide over and over and over again. You with me? So that's really important. Those are the 3 mistakes that I see leaders and people make all the time in their communication. So they're not aware of their survival guide. They're not considering who's in the room. And this could mean when I'm sending an email. When I'm seeing an email or making a phone call, the first thing I think about is what's their behavioral profile? How do I word this so that it connects with them? Yes. Obviously in group settings, that's a bit more complex, but it's still possible. And then when they're not aware of when we're triggered. So those are the 3 mistakes I see over and over again. And then people go, why didn't I have the impact I wanted to have? Why didn't I speak up when I could? It's because of these 3 things. And if you get very good, can you see that? If you get very good at these 3 things, you'll be able to tailor your communication, respond rather than react, listen and be silent with open energy and an open heart rather than a protective energy. Yes? So these 3 things are really important. All right, so the last piece, is everyone getting this? Give me some thumbs up and some, yes, this is making sense and helpful. Helps me to know. Oh man, 2 minutes. Okay, good. Thanks, Rexy. Very helpful, very helpful, very helpful. Excellent. So the last piece I want to give you is, I'm not going to leave you hanging. I want you to draw the last piece. We might go a minute or 2 over today, but and that's never happened before. Do you believe it? I always finish on time, except for the last session. So then what we want to do, see, you've got your wheel. So now the survival guide. Now we want to go, okay, so when I was, so this piece here, this next piece that goes out here, this is going to be really good for the recording. This is going to be the communication style or the communication empowerment that we create. So we're going to drop our backpack, right? And we're going to start to create a new communication style from the inside out from this awareness. So for example, when I presented my fish project and I ran out of the room crying and decided I need to be in more control, what if in that moment I went, oh, that's funny. I just forgot what I was going to say. What was I going to say? I can't remember. I think I'll make it up, right? So if I had have done that, maybe I might have been more fun. So I can make that mean something different as opposed to what I made it mean in the time. So I can create, I'm making it up. I could make any number of things up, but I want to make up fun. Because what if I just brought fun to that moment? How much better would that have been than me running out of the room crying and then deciding I need to control my communication? You with me? So, excellent. Okay, good, Tony, thank you. So, for example, I'm emotional, so therefore I need to be serious. Do you know how much serious has impacted my life and my fun in my life? And what about if years ago when I was 30 and I decided, yes, I'm an emotional being, what if I actually embraced that and went, what if I could actually be dynamic with my emotions? And I could be present with my emotions. How much better of a communicator might I be if I'm being dynamic and present and fun rather than controlled and serious? Yes? You with me? And so I've got 1 minute before it turns 8:31. If you have to jump off, but let's just take this moment, if you can, for 1 or 2 more minutes to finish this survival guide for yourself, this survival guide activity. So I'm going to give you a minute now to think about 1 or 2 times in your story where you can shift the experience from what you decided to something else. Because what if I had been fun in that moment? Or what if I had been dynamic in that moment rather than decide to be serious? So take a moment to do that and then we'll finish. Have an extra large backpack. Very cool. Just take a moment to invest in yourself. What are you going to flip? And if you'd like to write in the chat box, what are you creating now? If I was out there and I was writing in the chat box, I would say dynamic and fun and playful. Those would be my insights just from those 2 that I could flip. Yes. So then next time I'm starting to feel a bit emotional and I want to go into serious, That's not necessarily what happens now because I've practiced for so long, but still does. Then I go, hang on a minute, remember I want to be dynamic and fun. Then I flip into that, right? So that is then your connector for, have I got my backpack on? Or actually, do I want to create something else when I go into this meeting, when I have this conversation with this person? Because you've created now something to practice that's different here, right? That's your communication profile that you can create rather than your survival guide. All right, so it's 8:32. My job is to finish up now. So I hope that's been helpful. I'm loving to hear your feedback and ideas. So what I'd love to hear in the chat box as we finish up is, what are your insights? What are the things that you're going to create because you said so, because you know now you can take your backpack off? I am fun and dynamic. Thank you, Rita. Yes, being fun and playful while being authentic. Knowing how you created your survival guide for communication, and then stepping into, well, what else could I create instead? Flipping it. Yeah, very good. Something to think about. Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, I'm going to sign off because it's 8:33. I'm going to leave the chat box open for you to share your comments and insights if you'd like to, so I can read them, and any feedback that you have as well. And so we've packed it in as we always do. I hope you've loved it. I've loved being with you, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.